Hey sixth graders, welcome to today's video tutorial, and today we're moving on to 2.2. Chapter 2 is fractions and decimals. And section 2 is dividing fractions. Okay, and our learning target for today is we're going to have two parts to this. Write reciprocals. Might not know what that is yet, but you'll learn in just a second. And divide fractions by fractions. Divide fractions by fractions. Okay, I'm going to give you a few memory clues that I like to use today. And one of the nice things actually about dividing fractions is you're actually not doing any division. Might sound weird, but I'll show you in just a second. Okay, so we'll start off with a little bit of vocabulary. It says two numbers whose product is 1 are reciprocals. There's that word, reciprocals, reciprocals. To write the reciprocal of a number, write the number as a fraction, then invert the fraction. So the reciprocal of a fraction a over b is b over a, where a and b cannot equal 0. Okay, so invert there just means put your numerator as your denominator and your denominator as your numerator. Also, when you hear product, you should be thinking about multiplying. So when you multiply reciprocals, you should get an answer of 1. Okay, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Here's that meaning of the word invert. Again, I underline that here. You might want to do the same, but it says when you invert a glass, you turn it over. Okay, so here it is regular, and there it is inverted. Okay, so for our first example, all we're going to do is write reciprocals. We're going to practice writing reciprocals, and you'll see why that's important here in just a minute. So it gives us 3 original numbers, and we need to write the fraction and then its reciprocal, and then check to make sure that it's equal to 1. Okay, 3/5 is a fraction. Well, it's already a fraction. What is its reciprocal? Okay, well, we're going to make the numerator the denominator and the denominator the numerator. So the reciprocal of 3/5 would be 5/3. Okay, when it says check, well, that means does 3/5 times 5/3, is that equal to 1? Well, 3 times 5 on top, we just got done multiplying fractions. Top times top would give us 15. And bottom times bottom, 5 times 3 would be 15. Well, anything divided by itself is equal to 1. So that's why you can see the reciprocal of a number, its product is 1, because when you multiply them, you get an answer of 1. So same for the next one. Our fraction is 9/5. The reciprocal would be 5/9. Okay, and check. Well, 9 times 5 is 45 over 5 times 9 is 45. Does that equal 1? Absolutely. The last one, the original number is 2. Sometimes this can be a bit tricky for students. Maybe write a little star by this one. Reminder that to write any number as a fraction, all you need to do is put a 1 under it. So 2 as a fraction is 2 over 1, because 2 divided by 1 is 2. All right, so when I write the reciprocal of that then, okay, so now I need 1 as my numerator and 2 as my denominator. The reciprocal of 2 is a half. When I multiply that, I get 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, go ahead and try that on your own here. Pause the video and write the reciprocal of each number. Okay, hopefully for the reciprocals you got 4/3, 1/5, 2/7, and 9/4 for your answer. Okay, moving on to the key idea. This is going to explain to us today how we need to divide fractions. It says to divide a number by a fraction, multiply the number by the reciprocal of the fraction. Okay, just what I was saying before, how it's kind of weird when we divide fractions. We actually don't use division at all. We use multiplication and we use the reciprocal. Okay, let's see how they did this. The original problem is 1/5 divided by 3/4. Okay, they kept their first fraction the same of 1/5. They changed their division to multiplication and they made the second fraction its reciprocal. So instead of 3/4, they have 4/3. And then you just need to multiply them. So we'd come up with 4/15. Okay. I'm going to give you another way to remember that. I like to use the acronym KFF. And I'd encourage you to remember this as well. It's just a good memory clue to use here. That stands for keep, flip, flop. Keep, flip, flop. That means keep the first fraction the same, okay, 1/5. Flip the division to multiplication, okay, and flop our second fraction to its reciprocal. So instead of 3/4, the reciprocal would be 4/3. Excuse me, I had to sneeze there. Whew, that was the first while recording a video lesson. Okay, keep, flip, flop is the way I remember how to divide fractions. KFF, keep, flip, flop. Okay, let's try that with an example. When we divide a fraction by a fraction, it says find 1/6 divided by 2/3. Okay, sometimes it's actually even helpful for me to write KFF right above my problem. Keep, flip, flop. Keep 1/6 the same. Flip division to multiplication, and flop 2/3 to its reciprocal. That would be 3/2, just making the numerator my denominator and my denominator my numerator. And now it's just like last section for multiplying fractions. All you need to do is multiply the numerators, so this would give you 3, and multiply the denominators, which would give you 12. And I see that 3 and 12 have a common factor of 3, so I divide each by 3. And in most simplest form, I would get 1/4. Okay, KFF, keep, flip, flop, or in other words, multiply by the reciprocal. Let's try another one. A little bit of a word problem here. This time we're dividing a whole number by a fraction. It says a piece of wood is 3 feet long. You can see over here it's broken into 1-foot sections. So 1 foot, 2 foot, and 3 feet long. How many 3/4 foot pieces can you cut from the piece of wood? Okay, then they have each one broken down into 3/4 of a piece. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Okay, how many 3/4 pieces of wood can you cut from this piece of wood? Okay, we can just use this some division here and divide our total, which is 3 feet, by, we want to divide that into 3/4 foot pieces. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my acronym KFF, keep, flip, flop. Keep my first fraction the same. Well, Mr. Gillis, this isn't a fraction. Remember, you can write it as a fraction by just putting a 1 under it. So 3/1. Change my division to multiplication, and my second fraction to its reciprocal, so 4/3. I see that I get the reminder that I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to pause right here and come back to you in just a second. Okay, I left off here. This time, when I multiply it, I'm first going to simplify. So I see I look diagonally, I've got a common factor of 3. If I divide each of those by 3, I will get 1. Now I can multiply across. On top, I have 4 times 1, which is 4. And on bottom, 1 times 1, which is 1, to give me a total of 4. Okay, so you can cut 4 3/4 foot pieces out of the piece of wood. And you can see that right here. Here's 1, 2, 3, and 4 3/4 foot pieces. Okay. Got a few on your own problems here. Why don't you pause the video again and see how you do. Okay, double checking. Number 5, you should come up with 6/7. Number 6, 4. Number 7, 1.5. And number 8, 1 1/3. And number 9 would be 14. Okay. Again, if you needed help with any of those, come ask me or ask a neighbor and I will clarify for you. Okay, moving on to example 4 and 5 and a few on your own for each of those, and then I'll be finished up. Okay, so the next one is when we're dividing a fraction by a whole number. Again, nothing too complicated here that you need to worry about. Just make sure that you're making this whole number into a fraction. So keep, flip, flop. And I'm keeping in mind that this as a fraction is 2/1. So I've got 4/5, keeping that the same, flip, division to multiplication, and the reciprocal of 2/1 is 1/2. Again, I can simplify first. So I'll divide each of these by 2, will give me 1 and 2. And multiply across, I'd come up with 2/5 for my answer. Okay, so just remember with that whole number, make it a fraction by putting 1 in the denominator. Go ahead, pause, try out 10 through 13. Okay, answers for 10 through 13, you should get 1/6. For 11, 1/15. For number 12, 5/32. And number 13, 3/14. Let me know if you had troubles with any of those. And our last example, example number 5. Remember now that just because we're learning one new thing doesn't mean we can't spiral back to what we learned before, which is the correct order to do things in math. Give ourselves a little reminder. PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, do the correct order in math. Parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide from left to right, add, subtract from left to right. So a bunch of people might at first want to add these two together. Remember, we have to divide first before we can add. Okay. So I'll take 5/6 divided by 5 first. Keep, flip, flop. So the inverse of 5/1 would be 1/5. Multiplying across, I would get, well, let's simplify first. 5 and 5, divide each by 5, will give me a total of 1/6. Okay, now I need to add 1/6 to, can't forget about this 3/8, so I need to add 3/8 to this. Okay, now remember, when adding fractions, you need a common denominator. Okay, well, you could get both of these. The least common denominator would be into 24ths. Okay, so 1/6 into 24ths. I'm going to go like this. How did I go from 6 to 24? Multiplied by 4. So I'll do the same on top. 1 times 4 would give me 4. And I need to add to that, I need to make 3/8 into 24ths as well. So to go from 8 to 24, I multiply by 3. And I'll do that same thing on the top of my fraction. And 3 times 3 would give me 9. And when I add 9 and 4, that would give me a total of 13. And keep my common denominator now, which is 24ths. And it's in simplest form, so 13/24 would be my answer. Go ahead, pause the video, try the last 3 on your own problems. And the correct answers would be 9/10, 1/3, and lastly for number 16, 1/18. Okay, so overall, remember KFF, keep flip-flop. It's probably not as hard as you thought it was going to be because we're just actually multiplying when we're dividing fractions, which is kind of weird, but hopefully you learned something. As always, let me know if you have more questions, and good luck.